Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome to part 4, Road to Data Analysts. So basically on the last video, part 3, I kind of just revamped my resume, turned it into Slack, which is the platform that we use. It's kind of like Discord. Didn't really get any feedback yet. I do have a Zoom call today at 1:30. So an hour and a half from now, hopefully I could get some of this behavioral stuff done. On this stream, I'm going to try to bang out some of the behavioral exercises. Try to list some of these principles that they were talking about. I'm going to finish watching a couple of those Amazon videos. Which is leadership principles. Oh, I think I got that already opened up. Yeah, so let's try to bang out this. The goal is to bring out this behavioral questionnaire, hand it into Slack, and hopefully, start on the SQL stuff by this weekend. Kind of just get the basics down and see where that leads us, because kind of the meat of the whole language stuff. So trying to learn some SQL, get into Python. Maybe going into some AWS stuff, and system designing and all that stuff. So let's see where we left off on the principle stuff, and then there's also an exercise which is gonna be like 40-something minutes. So did ownership events are right a lot? Leaders are right a lot. Okay, let's check it out.
Are right a lot. Leaders are right a lot. They have strong judgment and good instincts. They seek diverse perspectives and work to disconfirm their beliefs. The right a lot leadership principle is very much proxy for judgment. And the truth is that you can do a lot of things right, but if you make the wrong decisions on really the key questions we have to answer for ourselves for customer experience in the business, you're going to have an issue. And we operate in high areas of ambiguity. In many of the businesses that Amazon pursues, we're the first to market, or we're inventing in that space. Or even when we built a business that works well, we're constantly trying to figure out how to keep changing and improving the customer experience. So we always deal in areas that have lots of ambiguity, lots of noise around it, and we have to be great at this company at sifting through all the different noise and finding the signal and what really matters for customers. And I remember when we first put this leadership principle in place, people often got it wrong. And what people misinterpreted was they thought, well, if I'm really great at the leadership principle of being right a lot, it means when we're debating something, my idea has to be the one that carries the day, because after all, I would be right a lot. And the reality is what we're all trying to do is we're trying to get to the best possible answer for customers, whoever's idea it is. And so what we need to do when we're thinking about a hard issue is we need to get the right people in a room, the right people to give feedback. It's often why, as leaders, we speak last in the room. We want everybody's input. We want, and a lot of times in those meetings, what a lot of the leaders are doing is they're thinking about what their going-in opinion was, and they're seeking to try and find a different way. I'm often questioning my most closely held beliefs on a particular topic to see, are they really right? Is there another way to think about it? Can we do better for customers? And so the key is to get the right people involved in giving feedback, listen to the different perspectives, and then think about what is the best possible answer for customers and for the business. It doesn't matter if it was your idea or not. In many of the best meetings I'm in, I never even have to express an opinion. The team has sorted it out for themselves, but all we care about as leaders is getting to the best possible answer for customers. That's our job. Learn and be curious. Leaders are never done learning and always seek to improve themselves. They are curious about new possibilities and act to explore them. This leadership principle is arguably the one that I have seen most differentiate the people I've worked with a really long time and where they have grown their career substantially versus those that have stayed stagnant. And I would say that for some people, at a certain point, and I can't tell you why, I have my own theses, but at a certain point, they find it too threatening or too difficult to keep learning. And I will tell you that the second you think there's little left for you to learn is the second that you are unwinding as an individual and as a learning professional. You have to be ravenous and hungry to find ways to learn. It's not easy to do, even though if you have the right mindset, it's quite simple to do. You have to think about the idea that you don't know everything and that there's a lot to learn. And even if you've spent many months or years learning a certain area, that it may flip upside down very quickly. Instead of that feeling threatening and scary, you have to think about that as being part of the fun of what you do. And by the way, our jobs and our lives would be so much more boring if we knew everything there was to know. And so what you have to do is you have to think about, you have to be honest at looking at a situation and what customers care about. And you have to be able to self-assess and be self-aware. What am I doing well and what's the team doing well and what do we need to get better at? And you have to think about what do you want to change? And then you actually have to build a real plan to change. There are actually a lot of people I know that are terrific about speaking about how they're going to learn, what they've learned, and what they're going to change, who are really lousy at actually affecting the change. You have to both have a plan on how you're going to change and then make that change. But that is the difference between often continuing to build great customer experiences and businesses and not, and growing and not. Try to get better, even a little bit better, every single day, every single week that you come into work.
A couple more videos.
Hire and develop the best. Leaders raise the performance bar with every hire and promotion. They recognize exceptional talent and willingly move them throughout the organization. Leaders develop leaders and take seriously their role in coaching others. We work on behalf of our people to invent mechanisms for development like career choice. Anybody who's ever been a part of building something big and world-class and hard knows it's never an individual that does it. It's always a team. And a team is comprised of great people. And by great, I mean many of the leadership principles that we've been talking about. It's people who are smart, who are right a lot, who are inventive, who can look around corners and be strategic and think big, who are into the details, who are able to move quickly, who have high ownership, who have the right customer obsession. That's what we mean by great people. And those are the people we're trying to find, and those are the people that deliver the best results for customers. It's part of the reason, by the way, that when we do hiring loops, the individual interviewers each take a leadership principle. That's how we define great people. And when you're in a hiring loop and you're in a hiring meeting, you have to ask yourself, the team has to keep asking, is this person at the bar? Do they raise the bar? And if the answer is no, you should not hire. Even if you have time pressure to hire people to get moving on a project, do not lower the bar. The thing that matters most for customers and what we get done for the business, and frankly for a lot of all of us who are inspired by the people we work with, is to work with people we respect and admire. Do not lower the bar. Who we hire is one of the most important decisions we make every day, every week, every year. The reality is that one half of the hire and develop leadership principle is about hiring. The other is really about developing people. And as a manager, you have to be organized and thoughtful about what a person does well and what they need to grow. And one of the interesting things that's happened over the last several years is that I think for a lot of companies and for a lot of people, it's been harder to give people more critical feedback. It's really much more popular to tell people what they're great at and what their superpowers are. And by the way, that is really important to recognize. But if you have great people and you have people who are truly hungry to learn and be curious and get better, They want to know, they need to know what their growth areas are. And leaders and managers have to be good at coaching. It's not a right for you to be a manager. You could be a really good individual contributor, but it doesn't mean that you should be a manager. It's a privilege to be a manager. And part of that privilege comes with the responsibility for thinking about and actively developing the people on your team and coaching them. And I can tell you that at least myself, and I know many people who would say the same thing, the managers I worked for who had the biggest impact in my career were not necessarily the ones that were the nicest to me. I like when people are nice to me, don't get me wrong. But what really made the difference were those leaders who recognized what I was good at, but really identified where I needed to grow to get to where I wanted to get and to realize my full potential. And that's what we have to do as managers of people. We want to help people grow and learn and get to their full potential.
Damn right. That's not what's going on in my industry. I'll tell you that right now.
Insist on the highest standards. Leaders have relentlessly high standards. Many people may think these standards are unreasonably high. Leaders are continually raising the bar and drive their teams to deliver high-quality products, services, and processes. Leaders ensure that defects do not get sent down the line and that problems are fixed so they stay fixed. Customers have very high expectations of us, and they should. And by the way, it's where we set the bar. And in this day and age, it's essential. It's so easy in this day and age for customers to switch, to change. The internet makes that super simple and gives customers very good information. And it means that you can't rest on what you've done for the last 10 years, the last 20 years. Historically, we have had very high standards, perhaps unreasonably high, but it's the right level for what we're trying to accomplish. And in my opinion, having high standards is one of the most critical underpinnings for teams. I've constantly seen it at Amazon. I've seen it at Amazon. I've seen it with friends. I've seen it with all sorts of kids and organizations I work with. Higher expectations lead to better results. And as leaders here and as individual contributors here, as the business grows and as the scope of what you all work on grows, you can't be in every meeting. And that means if you're able to, in the meetings you're in, set the expectations, set the standards high, model what good looks like, it's highly leveraged because it means that in the meetings that you can't be in, all the people who see you model it in the other meetings you're in can take that to those meetings and can spread it to the rest of the organization. During the pandemic, I feel like most companies had to relax their standards a little bit just to be able to get through what was such a difficult time, and probably for us too. And I think that we've all been fighting the last couple of years to get back to those almost unreasonable standards that we had for several years. And I would just say we've made a lot of progress, but keep fighting. That is a fight worth fighting. It's what customers expect from us, and it's where they're going to gravitate toward. The companies that keep increasing what's possible for customers and have those really high expectations deliver best for customers. Think big. Thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Leaders create and communicate a bold direction that inspires results. They think differently and look around corners for ways to serve customers. All of us have to be looking around corners. We cannot be content with where we are. Part of being a great inventor is being able to look around corners. And you have to constantly be asking, what are the next big breakthroughs for customers? What is a customer problem that needs solving? Look at technology and the technology that's around the corner. How is that going to change the customer experience? What are other companies going to do that we know customers are going to love, where we're going to want to be there first and we're going to want to deliver that for customers earlier? If you want to build a company that lasts over 100 years, and that lasts all of us, you cannot run the same playbook for decades at a time. And what's interesting is, even though that makes perfect sense to most people, it still tends to be hard for people to change, to pursue a different tack than what they've been taking, to take risks. And that's where leaders who are great at the think big leadership principle are so important. And so important to our company and so important in business. And if you look at the goals that we've taken, if you look at things like for years and years, the way people expect to get products from our e-commerce business was over many days, and taking that to a model of no more than 2 days, and then taking that to more often 1 day, and then taking that to same day. And eventually with drones and what we're doing with Prime Air, we should be able to take it into a couple of hours or less. That's very different. Or if you think about inventing the next generation infrastructure technology capability with cloud computing and AWS, or if you think about looking at the 400 to 500 million households in this world that do not have broadband capabilities and giving them that connectivity, or if you think about building the world's most helpful personal assistant, or if you think about how we can reinvent the consumption of automotive products, or if you think about what has been a hopeless area in this country for many years in healthcare and trying to reinvent that customer experience, these are bold initiatives that are not simple to do. And these types of initiatives require thinking big. And it's what you do if you want to serve customers better. And it's part of what not only makes Amazon unique, but also gives us a unique impact in the world. Bias for action. Speed matters in business. Many decisions and actions are reversible and do not need extensive study. We value calculated risk-taking. Speed disproportionately matters in every business, at every stage of the business you're in every industry segment that you're in, at every size of company that you're in, unless you have a monopoly. And I don't know companies that exist as monopolies anymore. Speed really matters. And there are some companies who get to a stage where they just believe they can't be fast. And I saw this a lot in my last job when I was managing the AWS business. I met with many enterprise CEOs who said, look, you don't understand. We can't move fast anymore. We have security concerns. We have compliance concerns. We've gotten really big. We have a culture that's slow. And the reality is that isn't true. Speed is not preordained. It is a leadership and a culture decision. And if you want to organize and prioritize and you value speed, you can move quickly, even if you historically haven't. And so you have to think about decisions in a certain way. Most decisions that any organization takes can be characterized as either one-way door or two-way door decisions. And the thing to think about is, imagine walking through a door. There are certain doors you can walk through where if you walk in the room and you've made a mistake, you can walk right back through that door and no harm. And those are two-way doors. And then there is a smaller number of decisions where if you walk through that door, maybe you can walk back through the door, maybe you can't walk back through the door. It would be very hard to walk back through that door. And those are one-way door decisions. The overwhelming majority of decisions that we make all the time here at Amazon are two-way door decisions. And those decisions should be made at the team level, and you should make them quickly. You should be thoughtful about them. I wouldn't make them in a harebrained way, but you should make them quickly. And if you get it wrong, walk back through that door. One-way door decisions, as I said, are going to be a very small number of those, and those you should take time to think through carefully, but most are two-way door decisions. Then you also have to have the right mindset and the right urgency about decisions. Don't take weeks to get done what could be done in days or hours. And by the way, that sounds super obvious, and you would be surprised how often you find teams that take weeks to get things done that could be done in days or hours. You have to have this idea in your head that we live in a world of closing windows. And we had this for the first many number of years of Amazon. And I think we still have it in lots of places. But where there's a closing window, there's a land rush. And if you think about the areas in which we are building businesses and customer experiences, we are competing against the most well-funded, capable, talented companies who are all pursuing the same types of things that we're going after. These are races. And so you have to think of it like that, like we are pursuing closing windows types of opportunities. And you want to show up every day, every week, thinking about how, when I leave this week, will my customers be better off than when I started the week? Now, is there a tension between having the highest standards and having a bias for action? Yes, there can be a tension. Because the reality is, in moving fast, you can't launch a subpar customer experience. By the way, launching a subpar customer experience also breaks the customer obsession leadership principle. And so, just like I said earlier, leadership principles inherently have tension in them because you actually want to be very proficient and fantastic for customers across a lot of dimensions. And sometimes those dimensions will intersect and conflict. And part of our job, part of the nuance of leadership principles, is to figure out how to find the right balance between them. But you can be fast while still having high standards. I've seen it for 29 years at the company. So we need to think of ourselves, and this is the way I think about the company, as being the world's biggest startup. And that's the way we need to behave. That's the way we need to act. And we need to keep asking ourselves, why can't we move faster for customers?
Frugality. Really?
Frugality. Accomplish more with less. Constraints breed resourcefulness, self-sufficiency, and invention. There are no extra points for growing headcount, budget size, or fixed expense. When I last did a presentation on leadership principles to a large group of people, it was about 4 years ago. And when I got to this leadership principle, I said, frugality is pretty straightforward. And on the face of it, it is pretty straightforward. But as I thought about it, over the last 4 years, we have hired so many new people who come from so many different backgrounds and contexts that I thought it might be useful to just share how we really think about what frugality is. There's a reason that we have door desks, and we have always had door desks. It's a signal to ourselves that we want to be scrappy, that we don't want extra garnishings, that we're trying to be as frugal as possible. There's a reason that our former CFO, Mark Peak, famously at an all-company meeting said, "I'll bend over for a penny." Mm-hmm. Because when you build a company whose foundation was based on a single-digit operating margin retail business, basis points matter. All of those things matter. For a long time, people thought we had a real business model disadvantage because we had this retail business that was a high-volume, relatively low-margin business. In fact, some people may still think we have that disadvantage. I think it's an advantage for all sorts of reasons, but especially because constraints breed resourcefulness and invention. That has always been true. Mm-hmm. And it also breeds being great operators of high-volume, low-margin businesses, which very few companies are, particularly very few technical companies. I saw this frugality come into play many times. If I go back to when we were starting AWS, people forget we built S3, which is our simple storage service, and EC2, which is our elastic compute cloud, with 13-person teams. 13-person teams. Those were both built. And I remember in the early days, people would say to us, well, this is not reasonable to expect to build something great with 13-person teams. I'm competing against companies who have teams 10 times the size of this team. And of course, those teams built amazing, pioneering, still leading products because they had to be inventive. Constraints breed resourcefulness. I also remember as we were scaling out AWS, which is a huge logistical business, that the fact that we had so many people who grew up in our retail business, which is a very strong operating, high volume, relatively low margin business, we were much better at operating that type of business and finding ways to be more cost effective for customers than other technology companies. When you save money on everything you do, it means you can invest more in giving customers lower prices and giving them more capabilities. Now, This all seems, I think, fairly logical, particularly if you've lived in this culture for a long time. But what's interesting is over the last several years, as Amazon has become a much larger company, I mean, we're a company that has $500 billion plus of revenue, the numbers get so large that people almost get numb to some of these numbers. I mean, I remember when I had to ask for 50 people or $1 million, it felt like so much money. And now I hear sometimes people saying things like, well, I don't know, it's only $100 million. Or, to start this idea, I only need 65, 70 people. Don't get numb to those numbers. Our very best people, our very best teams, our very best businesses do more with less. And if you work in a business that has more generous margins than our retail business, don't spend more just because you have margins to support it. Be frugal. Every bit you can save on, you can give back to customers in the form of lower prices and in more capabilities. And I would also say, don't believe that the best way to build your career and to develop your career is to have large teams. That is not the case. We want and value people who build amazing customer experiences and amazing businesses as leanly as possible. That's how we think about great people. That's how we're going to think about it in our promotion process. And that's the way we want to operate together.
Damn, 6 more videos. Okay.
Earn trust. Leaders listen attentively, speak candidly, and treat others respectfully. They are vocally self-critical, even when doing so is awkward or embarrassing. Leaders do not believe their or their team's body odor smells of perfume. They benchmark themselves and their teams against the best. So people sometimes get this earn trust leadership principle wrong. And they sometimes confuse it with meaning being nice to one another or having social cohesion or not challenging each other in meetings. I won't challenge you if you don't challenge me, or this person, isn't trustworthy because they challenge me in a group of people. That's wrong. That's not what we mean. What we mean by earn trust is being honest, authentic, straightforward, listening intently but challenging respectfully if you disagree, and then delivering what you said you would. So if you want to earn trust, if you say you've got something, deliver it. If you think we're doing something wrong for customers of the business, speak up. If you own something and it's not going well, own it. Say it's not going well, be self-critical, and fix it. If you think we're not as good as we're saying we are, benchmark it, use data, and show us that we're not as good, and vice versa. Sometimes I've seen teams waste time by beating themselves up when they're actually better than they think. Use the data and show us. I'll tell you a short story that's a personal story, a little bit embarrassing, but I'll share it, that I think is illustrative. This would have been in the early 2000s, I was co-leading the marketing team, and we were presenting our OP1, our operating plan, to the S team. And back then, we were still using PowerPoint presentations, and we had a slide deck. There was 220 slides, if you can believe it. It was like a 6-hour meeting. And I was presenting the first 80 slides or something like that. And about 10 slides in, Jeff interrupts me and he says, all your numbers are wrong on this slide. And I was taken aback and I said, why do you say that? And within a few seconds of him starting to dissect these numbers, I realized that he was right and that all the numbers on that page were wrong. And I was, of course, embarrassed. And I said, you're right, those numbers are wrong. And he said, well, why should I believe anything else in this presentation if those are wrong? And I said, well, I hope you will, because we have 210 more slides in this presentation. And, it turned out that we didn't have any more errors like that in the rest of the presentation. We got through it. And it was a very good learning experience, but I didn't get done with that presentation, and I wasn't resentful or mad at Jeff for pointing that out. I learned a very valuable lesson on what it means to dive deep and what it means to have ownership over the detail in your presentations. And I earned trust by owning it, being vocally self-critical, and then actually getting better and improving it and providing a much better presentation and account for what was truth the next time I presented in a much broader group. Dive deep. Leaders operate at all levels, stay connected to the details, audit frequently, and are skeptical when metrics and anecdotes differ. No task is beneath them. You could argue that there is a bit of tension between the strategic part of Think Big and the detail orientation of Dive Deep. And oftentimes people will say, well, which do you want? Do you want the strategic part or do you want the detail part? And the answer, of course, is yes. We want both. Amazon is unique from other companies in that we expect our people to not only be strategic, but to be willing to roll up their sleeves and be great at getting into the details. There are so many people who can fill up loads of whiteboards around office rooms with great ideas, but who don't know how to get the details of those ideas right. And the reality is that the details of any idea are what matters most. That's what people actually see, what customers actually see. It's part of, by the way, why the narrative format that we write papers and communicate in and the working backwards documents are so useful, because it's, whereas in a PowerPoint you can speak at a super high level and you don't have to get into the details, it is hard to fake the details in a narrative. And getting the details right really matters. Every product, every business that I have ever been a part of or seen in Amazon have been made or broken by how great we were at getting the details right for customers. Good leaders find mechanisms to inspect and audit the details and to understand anecdotes. And the right teams understand that the leaders who are looking at what they're doing and working with them on the details are doing so to help them be right a lot and achieve great results for customers. And then the other piece is that with anecdotes, there are often times, especially at our size, where you have these big metrics. I'll take an example. If you ever look at operational performance metrics, things like performance against service level agreements or error rates or latency, they're measured across really large numbers, and they can look perfectly reasonable. And then when you actually get into the details of it, you find, well, you hear this anecdote that this customer was unhappy about something, or you have a friend who told you that this didn't work out for them, or you get an email from a customer who says, why is this the case? And when you actually follow those anecdotes, you find that there actually is a problem that may not be showing up in the broader metric because we cover so many people, they don't register in the metric. But at our scale, even a 1% impact or a 0.5% impact is millions of people. So follow the anecdotes, inspect the details, because it's where you often find the real issues that can impact customers.
That's an anecdote. Disagree and commit.
Have backbone, disagree and commit. Leaders are obligated to respectfully challenge decisions when they disagree, even when doing so is uncomfortable or exhausting. Leaders have conviction and are tenacious. They do not compromise for the sake of social cohesion. Once a decision is determined, they commit wholly. At Amazon, you are not just empowered to speak up if you think we're doing something wrong for customers or the business. You're expected to do so, regardless of level. I can tell you that I get a lot of emails all the time from everybody at the company at every level about ideas they have, and I value them and I appreciate them. I told you so is an expression that's completely useless at Amazon. because it's a failure one way or the other. It's either I didn't speak up when I was supposed to speak up and have backbone, or that I'm not fully committing to the decision that we made and disagreeing and committing. We have this concept that we've talked about a long time at the company about social cohesion. And social cohesion is this notion that people often will compromise with one another to get along. And so the canonical example is, you look at a ceiling and one person says it's 10 feet and the other person says, no, it's 14 feet. And they say, let's compromise, it's 12 feet. Well, it's usually not 12 feet. There's usually some answer that's closer to the truth. Now, most issues that we deal with every day are not as simple as what I just said. They're much more complicated, much more nuanced. But the point remains, the idea for us is to be truth-seeking. We're not trying to compromise with one another to make each other feel better or to get along. We are trying to get to truth for what matters to customers. That's what we got to make decisions based on. And then, after whatever debate we have on issues, and some issues are so difficult that we debate it across many meetings and many weeks, but once we make that decision, we have to, as a group, disagree and commit and wholly commit to that decision, even if you are on the other side of what got decided to be pursued. Now, this, again, seems fairly obvious, but it's sometimes difficult because we hire smart people and we hire people who have a lot of mission passion, and it's hard to let go of what you think matters most for customers. But at a certain point, businesses have to make decisions. Otherwise, they can't move. They will be stagnant. And once we make a decision, we have to all get on board, because the areas that we're pursuing as businesses, they have such large expanses with so many things to solve for customers, with so many capable competitors, that we need to focus all our energy rowing the same way. So have backbone, disagree, and commit is a very important leadership principle to be great at.
All right, 3, 4 to go. No, 3. Gosh.
Deliver results. Leaders focus on the key inputs for their businesses and deliver them with the right quality and in a timely fashion. Despite setbacks, they rise to the occasion and never settle. I intentionally wanted to end with this leadership principle because you can get everything else that we've talked about right. You can be customer obsessed. You can be right a lot. You can be inventive. You can be strategic and think big. You can, dive deep. You can be speedy. You can have the right ownership. You can hire the right teams. And the reality is, if you fail on delivering, none of it matters. Where the rubber meets the road for customers is what you actually deliver for them. And there are two macro forms of delivery. There are outputs and there are inputs. Outputs are really high-level metrics. The ultimate output for a public company is your stock price. And other outputs are things like free cash flow or your revenue or your operating margin. But it's very difficult to manage the outputs actively. Now, I remember earlier in my career, I had a manager, and I would sometimes go visit that manager, and he had an office, a small office. It was completely dark except for the light, the glow from his monitor. And I would sometimes go to visit him, and I would walk by and I'd see him go, oh, and I'd say, what happened? And he'd say, well, I was looking at daily sales, and we just went from being up 0.5 of 1% year over year to being down 0.7 of 1% year over year. And I always thought that was so odd. I said, well, can you actively affect that by looking at the monitor? And he said, no, but it's really important. And of course it's important, because if you don't have the right outputs for the business, then you don't really have a business. But you cannot really actively manage the outputs. What drives the outputs are the inputs. Those are the actual initiatives that we're all pursuing to change the customer experience in the business. And that's what, if you look at almost all our key accomplishments that we focus on as teams and across the S team, they're almost exclusively inputs, because that's what can make a difference. I'll say one last thing about delivery that I often see people get wrong, which is there's so much work that goes into delivery. You have to define a product. You have a working backwards document. You make several versions of that working backwards document. You have to hire a team. You have, there are all sorts of changes along the way as you get into actually building the product, implementing it. That when you get to delivery and you get to launch, people take this deep breath and they kind of feel like they're done. And the reality is that launch or delivery is not the finish line. It's the starting line. It actually gets you to the starting point where you have something that you can actually build and make something meaningful out of. Very few, if any, things I've ever seen be successful at Amazon have launched with an initial launch and all of a sudden become big breakaway hits. You always have to launch. You have to see what customers react to. You have to get feedback from customers, and you have to iterate. And the very best companies, the very best teams are fast and organized about launching, but then they're constantly iterating. That's how you get 7, 8, 9 launches where you're iterating quickly, and all of a sudden you wake up and you realize, I have something really meaningful that matters to customers. That's what delivery looks like. Strive to be Earth's best employer. Leaders work every day to create a safer, more productive, high-performing, more diverse, and more just work environment. They lead with empathy, have fun at work, and make it easy for others to have fun. Leaders ask themselves, are my fellow employees growing? Are they empowered? Are they ready for what's next? Leaders have a vision for and commitment to their employees' personal success, whether that be at Amazon or elsewhere. This is one of our newer 2 leadership principles. And it's really a leadership principle that's broad and could be interpreted lots of different ways. And indeed, sometimes people do interpret it lots of different ways. As a company, we can't decide to be all things and to do all things for everybody at the company. And so there are times when employees will want us to pursue a certain tack, and if we don't do it, they say, well, if you were really Earth's best employer, you would have done that. And of course, you can't do all of those things. So I thought I would tell you what I think of as the best possible place to work for employees. I think that working at a place whose mission is to make customers' lives easier and better every day is very inspiring. Not just saying it, but doing it, walking that walk. And then a company that's willing to not only makes customers' lives better and easier every day, but that is also able and willing to do it on a very large scale. If you think about the number of customers that you impact. And then a company that's willing to invent and to invest and to bet. It's not as inspiring, at least to me, to work at a company that's running the same playbook for many years at a time. Being willing to look at what customers care about and invent in their behalf is pretty inspiring. And then being able to commit to those investments for long periods of time, not running away the first time you see any lack of traction or any problems. Really working through how to get to the right solution for customers and for the business. And then doing all that at a place where you have a group of people that's smart, passionate, and motivated, and trying to work together as a team and has passion about the mission that we're pursuing together. To me, that's what constitutes a great place to work. And Amazon is very unusual in being so compelling on all those dimensions. Now, are there things that we can do better for employees to be a better place to work? Unquestionably. And there's many of them, ranging from how we can make it even safer in our fulfillment network for our employees to how we can train and improve our managers so that they develop our teammates' careers the right way, continue to have a more diverse and inclusive employee base and set of teammates. There's lots we can do to keep getting better. We will not be bored anytime soon, but I think it's a pretty amazing place to work, but with ways that we're going to keep getting better.
This is the last one. You really
Success and scale bring broad responsibility. We started in a garage, but we're not there anymore. We are big, we impact the world, and we are far from perfect. We must be humble and thoughtful about even the secondary effects of our actions. Our local communities, planet, and future generations need us to be better every day. We must begin each day with the determination to make better, do better, and be better for our customers, our employees, our partners, and the world at large. And we must end every day knowing we can do even more tomorrow. Leaders create more than they consume and always leave things better than how they found them. I think of this leadership principle as largely being great community members in the narrow and broad communities in which we reside. And we have to keep asking ourselves constantly whether the communities in which we reside are better off because we're there. And if they're not, then we need to take action about that. And it's not just the jobs that we bring. We bring a lot of jobs to a lot of communities, but it's also the other contributions to the fabric of those communities. Things like affordable housing, where we've invested over $1.8 billion in affordable housing in the Puget Sound area or the Arlington, Virginia area or the Nashville area, or helping with the unhoused challenges we have in a lot of our cities. If you look in the Puget Sound area with our partnership with Mary's Place, I think we're the only corporation or company that I know that houses families in our corporate buildings. We have over 200 family members housed overnight, every night in our buildings, and over 1,000 family members a year. It's also helping with food security. We've partnered with 35 different cities to serve over 10 million free meals to over 80,000 families in need. It's helping with education. Our philanthropic educational efforts have impacted over 3.9 people in 9 countries in the past year. And our Amazon Future Engineer program has committed $16 million in over 400 scholarships to students who wouldn't otherwise be able to go to college and pursue a career in technology. Or how we use what we can uniquely do to help with world crises. If you think about natural disasters, we've delivered over 23 million relief items in 44 unique incidents in this past year. These are all things that we've done across the company to try and be better community partners. Over 150,000 Amazonians in this last year have volunteered in efforts that we worked on together. So we've always had a lot of individuals across the company who've given back to their communities. As a company, we waited for several years until we were profitable to be more involved in our communities. But if you look at the last number of years, we have really changed how we interact with communities, including being the top company giver to the Puget Sound area for the last couple of years.
Weeks later, they stopped to call me delusional when they saw my 26-inch waist at work. Today, I'm here to teach you how to make the new Japanese.
Hi, I'm Cody, and I'm a Senior Manager of Talent Acquisition at Amazon. I've had the privilege of interviewing Amazon candidates for nearly 9 years, and today, I'd like to share some of my best tips to help you ace your Amazon interview. In many interviews outside of Amazon, candidates are asked hypothetical questions. For example, how would you deal with a difficult customer or stakeholder? Or what would you do if you're faced with adversity or a business challenge? These types of questions are hypothetical and ask how you might act in the future. At Amazon, we like to rely on data and facts. To attain that data, we ask behavioral questions. These questions instead ask what you've already achieved or learned. We ask candidates to share some specific examples of when they've demonstrated behaviors or skills. For example, tell me about a time you dealt with a difficult customer or stakeholder, or share an example of a time when you faced adversity or overcame a business challenge. So, knowing this, what do we recommend to be the best way to answer a behavioral question? The STAR method. What is STAR? The STAR method is a framework to structure answers for behavioral interview questions. STAR is an acronym that stands for situation, task, actions, and results. Now to break that down, situation. Explain the situation to the interviewer so they understand the context of your example. Task. Talk about the challenge or goal of what you're trying to achieve. Action. Describe the steps that you took to reach your goal. Result? Explain the outcomes of what you did. You can even explain what you learned from that experience. At Amazon, we value straightforward and clear communication. STAR is a method to help provide a framework for clear answers. It's not something to memorize, but rather a tool to clearly communicate your strengths and experiences. Some candidates even use STAR terminology as they provide an answer. Now, here's how you could use STAR. Let's pretend you're asked the question, please provide an example of a time you exceeded customer expectations. Here's how I might respond using STAR method. Now, let's begin with the situation. In 2020, I was a customer success manager at my previous company. In this role, I was in charge of delivering a software implementation to a $2 billion company of around 5,000 employees that operated in 36 countries. Now let's pause there. The specific and publicly available data helps set the context for my example. Task. The challenge and task ahead of that year was to successfully implement, onboard, and train the users in all 36 countries. Success would be measured in a monthly satisfaction survey, as well as a joint report to their executive leadership board once a quarter. Now let's pause there. These data points give the interviewer a better picture of the context, risks, and visibility into my example. Now, action. This was not my first implementation, but the first at this scale. Knowing that, I formulated a plan to take 3 actions. First, I created a customer feedback mechanism on a weekly basis. Now this was above and beyond because in the past, this was collected quarterly. I also had the survey translated to 10 different languages covering all 36 countries. Second, I wanted to make sure our users knew the why behind this change, and I took the action of creating a monthly office hours and 12 continued education sessions on the product. In fact, these sessions are now being used as standard practice for all future implementations, which there have been 3 of this size so far. And third, a byproduct of the customer feedback actually revealed insights to other opportunities in their organization. I delivered these insights to the executive board in a thorough report, and they were delighted to hear the strengths and opportunities of their organization. Let's pause there. Notice I broke down my plan into 3 main actions. And notice that I'm using I statements for the actions that I owned. Okay, now the result. As a result, the implementation was delivered with a customer feedback score of 9.5 out of 10. And that's the highest our company has ever seen. The Insights report opened another avenue of business with the customer that doubled our revenue. Let's pause there. Here and throughout this example, notice how I'm using quantifiable data to show the scale of my impact. Hopefully that example gave you a good idea of how to structure answers using STAR. There's no right or wrong way to use STAR, but here's some tips. It can be tempting to jump into hypothetical scenarios. Focus on actual behaviors and outcomes. If it didn't go as expected, share the why or learning behind it. Pause and ask for feedback. Would you like to learn more details about this? Or does this give you a clear picture of the situation, task, action, or result? We value quantifiable data at Amazon. Share your examples with numbers, timelines, and quantifiable results where possible. Some folks bring notes to supplement their examples. I don't think I've seen a job description that has perfect memorization as a requirement for any role here. Remember, the goal of the interview is to communicate clearly with your data. STAR is one tool to achieving that. Thank you for watching. To learn more about how to prepare for your Amazon interview, check out Interviewing at Amazon Prep Guide, linked below.
Your father knows about saving money. Everything I'm...
All right. There we go. Behavioral.
In case you have any.
This is about 45 minutes long. Do we have time? I don't think we do. Let's see, we're at 120. Take a bathroom break. I gotta get ready for the Zoom in about 25 minutes. I think we can kind of go through. I'll set a timer though. Let me go to the bathroom real quick. Okay, so plan of action. We do these behavioral things. So I took the 4 principles. I think I listed 5, but 4 out of those 12 Amazon principles. Story about bias for action, bias, disagree and commit, ownership, prioritization. So I think I got 3 out of 4. But I gotta do the star method and do all that. But let's see what this video is. I'm gonna set a timer for 1:15 or an alarm, and then we'll end the stream there. Hopefully I could get right for the Zoom call soon. These are the things here that I need to do, and share it in the folder and get some feedback on it. But I'm going to take a look at this video real quick. It's 45 minutes, but we'll get through as much as we can.
Balls, although I can't remember them.
What was the curveball you got there? Do you remember?
I don't remember. So a while back, and that was an exhausting interview experience, honestly. The chief product officer really grilled me on behavioral. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be more like, hey, we have this data, help me develop a new feature for our product kind of exercise. But it was all behavioral.
Yeah, that's really annoying. Okay, so let's Seems like my developers are doing something because that is duplicated. Okay. So this mock interview, yeah, you can go over that mock interview. You go over these 2 videos and the behavioral questions, but honestly, what I would recommend you do actually, you should have, I'm assuming you know this template. And in the
Oh,
resource.
are you doing this? Are you doing this on your phone?
No. Why is that?
Oh, it's very skinny like a phone. The screen share.
Let me see if I can fix that. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, cool. Good to know. I have a large like monitor, and so it might be like large on my thing, but like not like a very wide monitor. So that's good to know. Okay, so you've seen my book. You've seen the page 63 where I talk about behaviorals, right?
Right.
Cool. So what I will say is use the STAR method when you're writing these out, but more importantly, use like bucket them in terms of behavioral of leadership principles. And so section 63, blah blah blah, like ownership, disagree and commit, bias for action, deep dive, prioritization, right? So
Deep dive.
I guess you took these questions here, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And so that should be good. The point isn't to create a story for each one. The point is to create one story and then bucket a lot of the leadership principles under that story. And so you'll see Amazon leadership principles here. Now, this is really important because I bet, especially for you right now, I think Chewy just steals the leadership principles from Amazon.
Really?
Yeah, I think
Actually, it doesn't surprise me.
I think the CEO is from Chewy.
Hey, look at that.
Yep. Customers first, deliver results, blah, blah, blah. They kind of, ownership, act as an owner, right? Think big is literally think big, right? Like they kind of do it in their own word, but, summit sign. They kind of do it in their own word, but, they're basically taken from Amazon. Yep. There you go. He was at Amazon for 4 years before he started Chewy out right afterwards. And so there's a reason he started an e-commerce company. But so the work you did here is not only good for you for like the next couple months as you're applying and interviewing, but it's directly applicable to the Chewy here. Let me zoom in. Any questions so far?
No questions so far. The link for the DE, I just look it up, the leadership principles for Amazon. I could see it, search it on my own.
Well, this one?
Yeah, I look it up on my own. But yeah, it's good that the Chewy operating principles are there as well. I'll look that up afterwards and review that too.
Yeah, it's the reason I stuck with Amazon here is because a lot of companies actually just mimic Amazon's. I mean, Lyft does it, Uber does it. Yeah, it's a lot of bases covered just by doing one company. So here, what I will say is just break it up into STAR. So I'm a senior there in Molina Healthcare where I led a team of 2 engineers. I'm responsible, blah, blah, blah. So I'm assuming that's STAR.
Yes.
I'm assuming.
Well, I didn't really know how to do STAR and tell me about yourself. I didn't really think about that. The other ones are much more situational where you could do STAR, but tell me about yourself. For me, it's just I don't know if you can really do STAR.
Yeah, that's fair actually. So let's see. What time we went over? Okay, this one is probably one of the more important ones. I was handed the task of migrating a foreign with different data schema. So this seems like situation. That seems like STAR, like T.
Yes.
I worked with. So this is the.
action, and then I guess part of that sentence is a result. Maybe I should make that a much more abundantly clear the outcome.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say for the result is put the quantifiable impact, right? Kind of like your resume. Like I bet if we look at your resume right now, you have this story in there in form of bullet points. So just go ahead and say like, hey, like I work with Oracle for a month to help debug the product so that my team can see the project through. You know, debugging the product leading to what result? Anything come to mind for that one?
There's several $1 million in savings annually. I have to look up the exact amount again that I wrote. But yeah, several $1 million in savings annually, which
Perfect.
I mean is somewhat good, right? It's $1 million.
Yeah. I think definitely good because you're telling the company A, you have business context, and B, you pay for yourself essentially, right? So that's exactly the stuff that will separate you from a lot of juniors that are kind of like, hey, I created this cool ML algorithm. Great. What did that ML algorithm do? It's like not much, just churn data, right? So you putting this is probably the most important line, to be honest. But just looking at everything right now, I do like that you kept it all really short because they're going to ask you like a follow-up question once you say that story, and so you'll have a conversation as opposed to like you just rambling for 20 minutes. So yeah, good job. Just make sure to fill that in, and then make sure to break up everything into stars. So let's keep going. I heard it said data from a previous engineer with non-employee interactive. I guess this one is kind of a T. The pipelines of the decoupling says, and that's R. Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job there. I think what I'm seeing is task at hand could be clearer. I think you're fine. I think you did a good job there.
That was good.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is maybe in like 4 words, just say like what project you were working on, to give it context. Like, hey, like,
okay.
I heard some data sets from a previous engineer who did not employ an iterative approach for a pipeline. Engineer was doing XYZ.
That's in task.
Yeah.
Description. Yeah. So layering the data and building it up in tables. You said integrate all the logic in one gigantic view.
Got it. I think you're fine.
Okay.
I think chances are they're going to ask for more information. Like, hey, what kind of data sets? What was the project? What was the company's goal? What was the company doing? But I think that's fine. I think that will be I'd rather have you say this amount than kind of go the other side of the spectrum where you say too much and the interviewer loses focus. You're much better off saying small amounts and then kind of having a conversation. Awesome. Any questions so far?
Yeah. Pretty. I'm glad you like my answers.
Quite frequent that my coworkers and I will disagree over data and its accuracy. It's not quite uncommon knowing that there may be a bug in the script or a faster method. I always like to approach these when taking a step back and listen intently to what the other part is. Sometimes there is truth in their words. When they're wrong, I like to calmly. Okay. This one, we need a story.
You need a story?
Yeah, this one seemed very vague.
Okay.
And very high level.
Okay.
Is there a story that comes to mind where you specifically disagreed with a coworker?
Yeah. Like, let's write something up.
Yeah, and do STAR. And I'm gonna.
A time with my coworker
Was that page 63? Yeah, on that ebook. Conflicting. Just make a note where we stopped on the video.
Okay, let's see. Back here. Here. And I here. Slash metal. Where's that? Yeah, the nice thing about this stuff is once you do it once, you don't have to do it again. You can use these for every single company, essentially.
Right. Yeah, it's very applicable.
Yeah, it's annoying, but it's also one of those things where like it's guaranteed you're going to have a behavioral round in every single interview, where it's not even guaranteed that you'll have a SQL round in every single interview.
Like the pill club.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I was like, no coding? Really?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was shocked by that one.
Have you heard that Google will literally take you through the whole interview process, even if they have no intention of really hiring you?
Interesting. I wonder why.
I read that. I don't know if it's true.
I don't think so. That seems incredibly expensive.
Yeah, right? It seems like a waste of resources. Like, why would I take you 5 rounds if I know by round 2 that you're not a good candidate?
Yeah. Where did you read it?
Might have been on Reddit.
Yeah.
Take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah. The problem is the saltiest and the pettiest people are usually the loudest on there.
That's true.
It's a selection bias at its finest. Okay, let's see. There's a time of discrete or nice report that the numbers are blah blah. So that's gonna be T.
Oh, you know what? I'm not very specific. I should say he thought. That makes it sound like the CIO. Oh, my coworker thought. Yeah, my coworker thought the numbers were okay. Our CIO result. Our CIO was very happy.
All right, let's work through this one. So there was a time when my coworker and I disagreed about the actuals being reported in a financial report. Market thought that was over-reported and showing a deficit in the budget. I invited him to a meeting to work through. Is there one where is there a story where you ended up doing something that wasn't your idea? You know?
Oh, like I initiated and disagreed and then proved them wrong.
Right. Like you and your manager disagreed, but you ended up going ahead and doing what your manager, like you committed to what your manager was suggesting, even though you disagreed. That's kind of like this combo right here. You disagreed, but you still committed to move forward instead of kind of like,
My previous boss, he gave under my previous boss, I used to do like 50% part-time pipelines, 50% dashboarding. So we had a customer and they were like, hey, I want these requirements in my dashboard. So I built out the dashboard per those requirements. My boss didn't like it. And his philosophy was always, oh, the customer doesn't know what they want. I know what they want. He's kind of like hard-headed like that. He got fired. He's not there anymore. And so I was like, okay, if you don't want these requirements, even though they specified these requirements, do it your way. You're the boss. And so I did it his way, and the customer ended up saying, this isn't what I wanted. I don't know. That's a very good outcome, but you know, I listened to my boss. Wasn't insubordinate.
What?
What was the result after the customer said that's not what I wanted?
We just pulled up the original revision I did. Said, is this what you want? The customer said, yes, that's what I want. That's a kind of funny story.
So this is where you're going to come off really good. So everyone agreed to do both versions. The first version, which is what the boss
Wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Even after having pushed back,
Right.
and boss kept pushing back. And the second version, behind his boss's back. Maybe we should word that differently, but
Behind his boss's back.
Just in case customer.
I get the gist of it, but I should use a different word. Behind his
Yeah,
boss's
exactly. Turns out customer is not happy but wanted original version. Evan reassured customer that original version was very doable if given an extra day, which turned around immediately after. Yep. Does that make sense? You disagree to be committed with your boss for XYZ reason. I would say, I would say boss was hard-headed about what was needed. And then, you pushed back and you couldn't push back. And so I would even say something like,
Tola.
You didn't want to go.
Tola.
Didn't want to go behind your boss's back and escalate. So decided to do both versions to save time. That makes you look like a good team player because you didn't go behind your boss's back, but it also made you seem like, hey, you weren't just taking orders, you also had a backup plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Awesome, because you do want to show kind of this ownership of like, hey, like
I like this story. I like this story version better. The true story version is I did the original report with the requirements, and then my boss looked at it and he goes, "I don't like this." And I'm like, "But it's what they wanted." And he goes, "I don't care. You're gonna do what I say." So I just saved it, kept it in my pocket, and then just built what he wanted.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. I mean that's perfect, right? Because that's A, it's a true story, so it's good, and then B, it's exactly what you should have done, and you can mention after they ask you a couple questions, you can always kind of circle back and be like, yeah, by the way, like he ended up getting fired. Kind of don't lead with that, but also like, hey, like I it turns out I was right, even though I committed to what my boss was saying.
Right. But I like this version better. I was like, oh, Evan was thinking ahead. He'll do two just in case.
Oh man. Okay, let's see. Let's do this one real quick because I do think this one's really important.
This is a hard one. You took a risk at work because honestly, it's really one I struggle with. 'Cause I really don't take any risks at work. I mean, I just go, okay, this is what you want. Okay, I'll do it. It's not much room for risk in the workplace. So this story is what I wrote.
Let's see.
Yeah, hopefully I'll do Zoom
Let's
call in
pitch in
about
my
15
startup.
minutes.
Within a
and then
competition, I had
hopefully get all
prepared a
this
speech.
behavioral stuff done.
We're in the room, and I